So for today's video, I prepared a list with the 10 questions you would want to prepare at all costs going into a phone interview. The first one is, do you have any questions for me? And this is a question that you will get asked at the end of the interview, no matter what. So you would want to prepare something in advance. If you want a quick hack here, ask them what are the three most important qualities to succeed in the role. And why I'm saying this is because if you know these things and if they spill the beans on these things, you will have the upper hand during the on-site interview. Some other examples could be how my performance will be evaluated, how did you join the company, what do you like best, what you don't like best, and I have other lists as well if you're into these questions or if you need more inspiration on these things. Number two, you have an employment gap of 6 months in your CV. Could you explain that? So if you do have an employment gap in your CV, you should be prepared to explain it. Some people have gap years. Gap years are fine. I know a ton of people who had these gap years going into companies such as Facebook or Amazon. The idea is that you want to prepare a little bit in advance to be more concise and to be straightforward with them. Also, make a difference between a gap and an employment gap to run your own business. This is one trick that I also found that some people unintentionally omitted, say they weren't employed because they did their own thing. So I don't think that's fair. I think there's not a gap in your employment. Are you good under pressure? Number three. So working under pressure, you must prepare an example of where the situation got tense, but still, I believe this should be a story with a happy ending to your advantage, because you're in a job interview. They didn't ask you for a negative story, so you should talk positively about yourself. Number four, have you ever failed? Or what's your biggest disappointment? So failures, are something that if you know a few things about my YouTube channel, you know that I often talk about these, and I have plenty of videos on this topic. If you're new to interviewing, this will take you a little bit of time to get used to, but it is something definitely worthwhile preparing for an interview. So you must talk about, if you had a business and it flopped, then it's probably easy. Just focus on the learnings that you had from it. Otherwise, just ensure that your learning is more or less quantifiable. So it's a proper failure in the first place, and then of course talk about the learnings that you had. Number five, what are you most proud of? What's your most successful project, right? So this is something that from experience pretty much everyone prepares for a phone interview, so I won't insist on that one. 6, do you like to work by yourself or in a team? So what should be the best answer to this? Well, the best answer to this is both, and you would want to exemplify both of these. So this is the type of question that's general, and you would want to get to it in a more specific way by you could start with a general explanation, like whenever the situation implies I like to work in a team. Like if I feel like distributing work makes sense, then probably I want to work in a team. Or if I feel like working by myself would speed up the project, and I prefer to take feedback from my teammates only after it's done, that I would probably take that approach. And would you like me to go with an example for either of these cases? This could be one way to go. Number 7, what keeps you motivated in your work? So this is another question. This is more for manager level roles. I've heard this a lot for manager level roles in phone screening rounds, and this is again a more general type of question. So this is talking about your, not necessarily your management style, but how do you start your day, for example. This would be also a synonym question for that. So just, I'm sure you have some routines that you could talk about in your answer here. For example, nowadays, and it's not something I always do, but nowadays I prefer the first thing in the morning to read a book, like to an audiobook. And this is how I start my mornings, the first 1 or 2 hours. to read the book, then I maybe start my day with a walk, and then I do whatever I have on my to-do list, and then I have lunch and so on and so forth. But the idea is that you want to have something from your routine, something specific that you enjoy doing, that helps you to stay motivated in these things. Now, of course, the reason why I'm reading all those books is because I want to get more ideas, and what I want to brainstorm a lot for HR content that people actually want to consume. 8, why you, or why this company, or what is your 5-year plan, or where do you see yourself in our team? So needless to say, you would want to think about here of a broader example, and the reason why I gave you these variations of the question is simply because you must find what works in your case, right? So if you prefer to answer why you by why this company, then so be it. That's perfectly fine, but you must find your differentiators and what keeps you excited. And from experience, if you don't prepare on this, your answer will sound very scripted. Like, I very much relate to the culture of this company, and the people that I know here are great, right? So this is the generic answer, that you praise the company and that's it. You must take this one step further. You must show your differentiators. You must talk about, if you want to get HR people, you would want to talk about your 5-year plan and how it blends into the job that you're applying for, in the process that you're applying for, actually. And it's the things that you would want to prepare on. This is my main point. So each candidate will have their own things, and I also have a couple of other videos on this channel if you would want to learn more. What's your strength? Number 9. And on the same topic, what's your weakness? But what's your strength is the key thing here. From experience, if you don't know what's your strength, that it will take you a generous amount of time to find what's your one thing that sets you apart from other candidates, even if you specifically for this job interview, but usually your core strength as a professional. But once you know it, is not only useful because you would be able to answer a question effectively, the what's your strength, but you would answer any question. Even the question you will ask the interviewer at the end of the interview will sound different because you know what's your strength and you know how to sell yourself better in a job interview. So that's why, for example, my strength, I talk about this persuasiveness, and I would motivate. I have more than 400 YouTube videos uploaded. Right, so this is a quick example. So preparing your strength and your weakness to some extent, it's also something useful. Your weakness, you see, I found, you might say, hey, but I cannot talk about a true weakness because I might get disqualified. I found this to be false for high-performing company. What I found is the better the weakness, the more profound the weakness it was, the more likely the candidate was actually going to succeed in the interview, to the extent they were able to communicate it properly. So here, now of course, if you just got fired because of insubordination from a previous job, you won't say this in a phone screening round as your weakness, insubordination. But if you're applying for I don't know what role, you could, for a super senior role, you could sell it as well as a last resort strategy. So I know people who did this quite successfully. It varies by your communication skills, but the thing you would want to keep in mind here is not the weakness that matters, but how you communicate it, what matters, and in the context of that overall conversation. And last but not least, the most commonly asked question in a phone interview is, tell me about yourself. Why is it so commonly asked? Well, most of the time, like it or not, but those interviewers will not have thoroughly read your CV in the first place. So that's why they prefer, hey, why don't you tell me a few words about you, and then we'll take it from there, right? So this is the single most important reason why you want to prepare a proper answer for this, because this is the starting point of a conversation, and also because it's the first impression. But you basically, if you only give them 5 examples, 5 things about you, they can only hang into those 5 examples, right? If you don't want them to dive deeper on something you don't like, then don't say it when you talk about yourself. But if you have this opportunity to drive the conversation, to have a starting point for the conversation, yes, you should definitely capitalize on this. Because these phone screening rounds are meant to be concise and to the point, so you would want to stay with your answers around the 2 minutes mark, so it's rather transactional. So this is why, tell me about yourself is an important one to prepare. And I also link a couple of other videos specifically on this topic in the video description. So this will be the 10 questions you would want to prepare at all costs going into a phone interview. So hopefully you found this useful. Thank you.